Kaylee?
All right, Joe, joining me now as our political panel this evening, Bloomberg politics contributor and Democratic strategist Adam Hodge is with me, managing director at Bully Pulpit International, alongside Republican strategist Leslie Shedd, founder of Rising Communications. Welcome to you both. I want to begin with the conflict, or perhaps not conflict as the administration is characterizing it now, with the ceasefire with Iran that they say is being maintained. They're making the case, Leslie, that Project Freedom, to ensure free maritime navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, is separate and distinct from the combat operations, which they now have declared are over. Is the electorate likely to see it that way when we still have high gas prices and thousands of troops in theater?
Well, I think what you're talking about is whether or not the electorate would support this, right? That's a very different conversation than the argument that they're having right now about whether or not hostilities are still going on. Hostilities are not going on. The United States is trying to ensure safe passageway of an international waterway, right? That is the number one focus right now. They are not attacking proactively. They are simply trying to defend themselves and allow ships to freely pass through. And I think that people will be very supportive of that. They understand that the problem is that we can't get ships through the strait because Iran has launched this global war against every other country by closing the strait down, and they want to try to see it get reopened. I think it's great that the president's trying to do this.
The problem is, of course, Adam, that the strait wasn't closed before they launched Operation Epic Fury.
I mean, how dumb do they think the American people are? It's laughable. As you just said, there would be no blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. There would be drones or speedboats attacking tankers in the Strait of Hormuz if we had not proactively and preemptively launched this war over 66 days ago. And look, taxpayers now, American people, are spending $1 billion more a day for gas than they were when the war started. $4.48 a gallon. That's a huge spike over where it was just a couple months ago. And what you heard today from the president, from Marco Rubio, is still no clear plan for what they actually want to achieve. And so one day it's the nuclear dust, one day it's their missiles, one day it's the humanitarian crisis. You just can't get a straight message out of the president, out of this White House. And that's why you've seen the president's popularity tank, and that's why it's weighing on so many of the members who are running for re-election and opening up so many of these Senate seats for Democrats to win in November.
Well, Adam mentions Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He was at the podium in the briefing room.
He did great
today,
right?
fielding another job for the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Now he's acting as a press secretary, at least for the day, too. But it was interesting to see him there as J.D. Vance first voted in the Ohio primary today, and then he made tracks to Iowa, where he's campaigning alongside Zach Nunn and others with these races that look like they could be hotly contested in Iowa. Is this not a safely red state any longer?
These Iowa seats have always been hotly contested. I think Marionette Miller Meeks won her seat by something like 300 votes last time around. Same thing with Zach Nunn. He's in Iowa because he cares about Iowa. He wants to make sure that we have these great U.S. Congress people return, and hopefully that we get Ashley Hinson in the Senate, who is just a fantastic Republican woman.
Well, and that Senate seat in question, knowing that Iowa hasn't elected a Democrat to the United States Senate in 18 years, Adam, it does seem that your party is thinking there might be some hope there, and not just there, in other states like Texas, too. On Texas, we did get some new polling out from the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston on the Republicans still in that race and the runoff later this month. Likely runoff voters backing Ken Paxton, 48%, to the incumbent Senator John Cornyn's 45%. How do you read that in terms of assessing the odds of the Democrat James Tallarico here?
I mean, it gets Democrats excited, to be honest. The chance to run against Ken Paxton would be a dream. He is a toxic candidate who was nearly expelled from the Texas Senate, who has a whole bunch of scandals and corruption scandals dogging him. And they're spending millions and millions of dollars in this primary while James Tallarico is just rolling in the dough and going out and talking to voters across the state of Texas. And again, the fact that we are talking about potential flips in Texas, in Iowa, that Ohio is back on the map, that Maine is a real shot for Democrats. It's going to be hard, but I could not believe, if you had asked me a year ago, that we'd be sitting here today talking about the U.S. Senate being in play. And then it's down to two main things: Donald Trump's unpopularity and the fact that costs keep going up and the Republicans are totally distracted from solving that problem. Instead, they're going to give $1 billion to a ballroom so the president can throw more fancy parties. That is a recipe for disaster, and it keeps giving Democrats more ammunition to try to take back both houses of Congress in just 6 months.
Well, and of course, President Trump still hasn't endorsed either Paxton or Cornyn, and I wonder how far that endorsement or lack thereof could go and how far the president is able to influence these elections across the country anymore. Perhaps we're going to get a taste of that today, Leslie, in Indiana, where he, of course, has actively campaigned to oust these 8 state senators who didn't go along with his redistricting effort. He called them on True Social today rhinos. He says there's great patriots running against them. What will you be looking for in these results? Does he need to have all 8 ousted in order to declare victory?
Well, first of all, just on the Texas race, look, I love the media's obsession with this idea that somehow a Democrat is going to win the ruby red state of Texas, right? It makes Democrats waste tens of millions of dollars in the state, and every year they get trounced. So whoever wins the primary in Texas, 100% is going to be the next United States senator from Texas. Okay. There's just no doubt. But I love it. Please, keep coming.
I'll take that.
Spend that money in Texas. Absolutely, 100%. When it comes to Indiana, first of all, most people don't know what redistricting is. They're not really tracking it. It's not some kind of a galvanizing issue. I think if the president doesn't sweep every single one of these elections, that it in no way is some kind of an indication of his, hold over the Republican Party. He still has something like 85, 90% support of the Republican Party. We'll see what happens tonight. I imagine he will win most, if not all of them. But again, I don't think that is a good indication for, where he stands with the party.
All right, we'll leave it there. Leslie Shedd, that is, and Adam Hodge, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Joe,